Welcome to It's Easy with Twinkl. Today, we're going to explore something that plays a huge part in choosing the next President of the United States, the Electoral College, and how it connects to the 2024 election. Ready to dive in? Let's go! But don't worry, despite sounding like a school, it's not an actual college with classes and exams. It's actually a system used to elect the president every 4 years. When you think of an election, you probably imagine millions of people voting, right? Well, those votes are important, but the Electoral College is the system that decides who wins. You might be wondering, what is the Electoral College? In the United States, we don't choose our president directly by popular vote, where each individual vote decides the winner. Instead, we have something called the Electoral College, a group of people called electors who cast the actual votes for president on behalf of each state. This system has been around since the Constitution was written and is meant to make sure all states, large and small, have a say in the election. When people vote for the president, they are actually voting for a group of special people called electors. These electors then cast their votes for the president, and that's what we call the Electoral College. So how exactly does the Electoral College work? Let's break it down. There are 538 electors in the Electoral College, and each state gets a certain number of electors. This number is based on something super important: population. The more people living in a state, the more congressional representation they have, which is just a fancy way to say the number of senators and representatives. The number of electors is the same or equal to the number of congressional members for each state. Every state has 2 senators, but the number of representatives a state has is based on its population size. The more people a state has, the more representatives it gets, which means more electoral votes. For example, California is the most populated state with around 39 million people. That's a lot. Because of this big population, California has 52 representatives in the House. Now, if you add California's 2 senators, that brings it up to a total of 54 electoral votes. Now, let's compare that to Texas. Texas has about 30 million people, so it has 38 representatives in the House. Add in the 2 senators, and Texas comes out with 40 electoral votes. Each state's electoral votes are like its voice in the election. The bigger the population, the more votes they get. Now let's look at Wyoming, with a smaller population of about 580,000. It only needs 1 representative in the House. And like all states, it has 2 senators. So Wyoming has 3 electoral votes. Vermont is similar, with around 650,000 people, giving it 3 electoral votes. Even though smaller states like Wyoming and Vermont have fewer electors, the Electoral College makes sure every state, big or small, has a voice in the election. This way, candidates can't just focus on big cities or states with tons of people. They have to pay attention to everyone. Okay, let's talk about what happens on Election Day. When people vote for president, they're actually voting for a group of people called electors. Who are these electors? Each political party picks electors in each state before the election. If the Democratic candidate wins the state, Democratic electors vote. If the Republican candidate wins, Republican electors vote. In December, each state's electors meet to officially cast their votes for president and vice president based on the state's popular vote. When you hear about electoral votes, that's what's happening. Most states use a system called winner takes all. This means that the candidate who gets the most votes in that state wins all of the state's electoral votes. For example, in the 2020 election, Joe Biden won the popular vote in California, so he received all 55 of California's electoral votes. The same thing happened in Texas for Donald Trump, where he won the popular vote and got all 38 of Texas's electoral votes. But 2 states, Maine and Nebraska, do it differently. They split their votes, 1 per congressional district, with 2 going to the overall state winner. In 2020, Biden won 1 vote in Nebraska, while Trump won the rest. This makes every district count, so candidates have to pay close attention to every area. Now let's talk about swing states and battleground states. These are states where the vote can go either way, Republican or Democrat. They're super important because they can decide the whole election. Swing states like Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan often switch between parties from one election to the next, which makes them key to reaching the 270 electoral votes to win the presidency. That's why candidates spend so much time there. A few votes can make all the difference. Other swing states for the 2024 election include North Carolina, Nevada, Arizona, and Wisconsin. A candidate needs 270 electoral votes to win the presidential election. Once the electors have voted, we add up all the votes from each state. The first candidate to reach 270 wins the election and becomes the next president of the United States. If no one reaches 270, which is rare but possible, the House of Representatives step in to choose the president. But usually, the electoral votes determine the winner. The Electoral College is important because it decides who becomes the next president. Why do we use the Electoral College instead of just counting everyone's votes? The idea is to make sure smaller states have a say in who becomes the next president. If we used the popular vote, big cities could have more control. The Electoral College requires candidates to win across many states, so every state matters and every vote counts. And that's how the Electoral College works. While it might seem complicated, it's just a way to make sure everyone across the United States has a voice in choosing our president. The Electoral College plays a big role in keeping our democracy balanced and making sure every state matters.
Subscribe to Twinkl Teaching Resources USA for more It's Easy with Twinkl videos.